Order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the town of Basalt on Tuesday, October 3rd. Can we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Bill Marin.
Yo.
Kyle Oberketter is absent. Eric Bozick.
Yes.
Rob Levitt.
Here.
Cindy Hirschfield.
Here.
Katie Hostetler.
Here.
Mike Horvath.
Here.
And Bob Kaplan is absent. You have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. First order of business is to approve the meetings from August 15th of this year. Do we have any comments, changes, or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second from Rob. All in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. The next order then is a continued public hearing on the Jadwin Black Mountain PUD sketch plan application and associated land use requests. And I will hand it to staff.
Thank you. Bridger, you guys want to come up to the applicant table, please? Let me please share my screen here. There we go. This is a continued public hearing on the Jadwin Black Mountain sketch plan application to construct 68 residential units, 12 short-term rental cabins, and 7 seasonal glamping pads on the Jadwin property at 431 Emerald. The review process, as was discussed at the last meeting, is that the applicants have applied for annexation as well as sketch plan PUD approvals. As it is a PUD proposal, it requires 3 rounds of review by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council with public hearings at each level. The applicants are currently in the sketch plan phase of the application, which the intent of the sketch plan is to determine whether the concept is generally desirable and consistent with the town's master plan as well as objectives. The sketch plan does not provide for any vested rights. At the last meeting on September 5th, the P&Z heard a refresher presentation on the proposal from the applicants and an explanation of the discussion items that were identified by staff. The P&Z also considered public comments at the last meeting and provided initial discussion on the application. P&Z continued the public hearing as there was a series of additional supplementary application items that the applicants were working on at that point. So this evening, staff would like to go over additional information submitted by the applicants as well as the recommendations provided by the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission and the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Commission that were provided since the last P&Z meeting. Then we would suggest taking and considering applicant comments, taking public comments once again on the additional information provided, and providing commission discussion. Staff has included draft conditions in your packet for consideration. So as a brief refresher on the proposal, the applicants have proposed the 68 residential units in the southeast quadrant of the property, which are shown in the yellow on the site plan. They've also proposed the 12 short-term rental cabins that are in purple, and then 7 glamping sites that are seasonal that are in this area here north of the pond. 1/3 of the property adjacent to the river approximately is proposed as open space and recreational area. And then the applicants have proposed to dedicate what's called the dogleg parcel to the town for a community benefiting use. Since the last meeting, the applicants provided a series of additional application materials to address various discussion items and topics that are listed in your staff memo. Specifically related to traffic and transportation, the applicants updated the traffic study to address the technical considerations and comments that were made by the town's third-party traffic consultant, Jim Charlier. But the conclusions to the traffic report did not change even after Charlier's technical comments were addressed, with the conclusions being that they would still have acceptable levels of service at the intersections with the additional traffic that would be generated by the development. The applicants also provided conceptual designs for improvements to the Emma Road and Highway 82 slip lane intersection, as well as designs for improvements to the Midland Avenue and Emma Road intersection by the post office to address the concerns from staff, Charlier and Associates, as well as the fire district. At the Emma Road slip lane intersection, they've designed improvements to improve the turning radius, as you see here, and it's also in your packet, to allow for easier access from emergency service vehicles as well as larger delivery trucks. At the Emma Road and Midland Avenue intersection, they've designed a couple of options for a dedicated right turn lane for down valley traffic. As you can see here, they've proposed to add the dedicated right turn lane. This option shows the dedicated right turn lane starting up valley of the driveway to the single family house that's located right here. They also included an option that showed the right turn lane starting down valley of the driveway to the single family house on this property. Staff, in looking at it, believes that the option that starts the right turn lane up valley would provide more community benefit because it would provide additional queuing. However, if the sketch plan application were to be approved, staff would do more research before the preliminary plan application as to whether there's safety issues with either of these options. The applicants also have provided an operations plan for short-term rental that addresses parking management on the site. They propose to have an on-site manager that would be there for 24/7, and they would enforce one car per cabin and short-term rental glamping site. They've also provided draft hours for the recreation amenities as well as the pond, which are proposed to be limited to dawn to dusk. There's draft conditions in there that would require compliance with this plan. They've also provided a plan that's in your packet for addressing privacy for direct neighbors. The applicants can detail this further in their comments, but it includes fencing to prevent people and pets from going beyond the property boundaries of the Jadwin property. And there's a draft condition that the applicants would provide a plan for pets in the development at the preliminary plan phases due to the fact that there's interface between wildlife habitat as well as the development. Related to the pedestrian bridge, as was noted at the last meeting, there was a desire for a pedestrian bridge in the master plan if more than 80 units of density were proposed on the Jadwin-Stott primary parcel. Was introduced by Sopris Engineering, that Sopris determined that the span of such a bridge would be significant and that the abutments would need to be provided outside of the floodway and floodplain. So you can see the location of where the bridge abutments would have to be according to Sopris's analysis. They also provided a comparison of the distance and length of this bridge in comparison to some of the other pedestrian bridges that are in the valley. This bridge would need to be longer in terms of its span than the pedestrian bridge over the Colorado River by the hot springs in Glenwood. So staff has not included a condition requiring the bridge in the draft conditions. We would propose that between sketch plan and preliminary plan that staff would have a third-party engineer do an analysis to make sure that Sopris's thoughts on that bridge are accurate. The applicants also provided a sketch and study to show how a community facility could potentially fit on the dogleg parcel, including parking for such a facility. In this sketch that's in your packet, they've laid out a 4,000 square foot footprint for a community facility, as well as parking and also playground space if it were to be provided as a daycare facility. And as such, staff believes that it would fit on the site for a 4,000 square foot facility. Staff has included in the draft conditions that the applicant would be required to provide an appraisal as part of the preliminary plan application for this parcel, so that the town could weigh the value of the community benefit being provided in terms of dedicating the parcel versus requiring a core and shell of a daycare space or community facility space, which was called for in the master plan. So that's in the draft conditions. Other topics that came up since the last meeting, the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, the BAC Commission, reviewed the application and provided a recommendation. As was introduced at prior meetings, the applicant has proposed for 24 of the 68 residential units to be deed restricted as rental category 2 level affordable housing, which equates to 35% of the dwelling units and 27% of the floor area. The town code, as was noted at the last meeting, requires 20% of the units and 25% of the square footage to be deed restricted. So BAC considered whether this was a sufficient level of affordable housing and considered whether to require additional resident occupied units, but decided not to recommend additional affordable housing. BAC also reviewed the floor plans for the affordable housing for consistency with the affordable housing livability requirements that are in the town's community housing guidelines, and they determined that they complied with the livability guidelines in the housing guidelines. It was recommended by BAC that the tenants of the mobile home on the dogleg parcel receive an occupancy priority in the affordable housing if it were to be developed on the site, and that has been included as a draft condition. Other topics included the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee recommendations with regards to analysis on the open space and trails aspects of the proposal. Eagle County provided comments, and in their comments they recommended that the glamping sites not be able to be located within the 100-year floodplain. They further recommended that any structures be set back 50 feet from the high water line of the river. Additionally, they provided comments recommending that a river access and recreation management plan be developed that would include best management practices and user education and guidelines, as well as signage to prevent additional disturbance and degradation of the riparian area. Pickens County also provided comments. As part of Pickens County's comments, they also recommended not allowing glamping in the 100-year floodplain. They also recommended that trail improvements be coordinated with Pickens County Open Space and Trails, as well as that CPW be consulted related to wildlife habitat and coordinating impacts on it. They also recommended, once again, that they didn't support glamping in the 100-year floodplain. Given that these comments were somewhat generic in nature, staff thought it appropriate to also have a site walk with Rick LaFaro, the Roaring Fork Conservancy, to go over and evaluate the open space and recreation area. LaFaro expressed that the site has unique natural aspects that other riparian sites don't have. He expressed that the area of wetlands that is northwest of the pond on the site, it should remain undisturbed. It has a ditch area. You can see a photo of it. It's high-quality wetland area, and so he suggested that that area not be disturbed. You can see it on the site plan here. There's also a ditch on the northeastern area of the site that also he recommended be undisturbed as part of the proposal. And so he recommended that trails on the site be field fit to areas that are already kind of disturbed, and there are some of those areas. He further recommended that the deck structures that were proposed in the site plan be eliminated and changed out for potentially rock steps similar to what we have on the River Park side of the river over here. He also found a fairly rare orchid on the site called the Ute Lady's Tress in a pasture area, in this area north of the pond, and recommended that the glamping pads and trails be field fit around the areas where the orchid exists. So Post agreed with the comments from both Eagle County, Pickens County, as well as LaFaro's recommendations, except that they were agreeable to allowing seasonal glamping pads in the 100-year floodplain, as long as a 50-foot setback was adhered to. And also they recommended the caveat that the pads be fully removable to allow natural rejuvenation of the vegetation under them outside of the summer camping months. So staff has included draft conditions for consideration that the applicants detail the open space amenities. If you remember, these are proposed to be public recreation open space amenities, as well as providing a plan that shows the river access point and the rock steps, as well as a plan for field fitting the glamping and trails, and a site plan showing that the glamping pads would be set back at least 50 feet from the high water line. There's also a draft condition consistent with Eagle County's comments that a river access and management plan be provided as part of the preliminary plan application for consideration by P&Z and council. So this evening, staff would recommend taking applicant comments, taking public comments, and providing P&Z discussion. Staff is happy to entertain P&Z questions on the draft conditions after the applicants provide their comments. And ultimately, P&Z has several decision options this evening. You could make a recommendation to council, or P&Z could identify additional information that might be needed. And if that's the case, you could also continue the public hearing to a future meeting. So that being said, we do have the applicants here this evening. We've got Bridger Smith, as well as Ramsey Fulton, representing the applicant team. I'll stop sharing my screen. Do you guys have comments for P&Z? Do you want me to
If you want to just keep sharing your presentation there, James.
Do you want me to bring up yours here?
Yeah, we weren't able to get on the Zoom.
I'll bring up yours.
Thank you. There it is. Thank you.
All right. Good to see you all. Go to the next slide, James. So we thought we'd just show this view to show all the potential connectivity on the pathways, getting to the bus stop. You know, hopefully the future connection at some point in time through the stop property, which is a goal of the town. You can go to the next slide, James. Here we've got the bus stop over here, and then we spent quite a bit of time with Sopris Engineering working on this turn on the Midland. And like James was saying, we've got 2 options there. Both of those options, I think, are a pretty big improvement to what's there, and even if this project didn't happen, that's something that I think would be a big benefit to the town. So we're open to both those options. And then we've also looked at this on-ramp pretty carefully, and that would be a big improvement. Then we also spent, since we last saw you guys, we spent a fair amount of time looking at the different ways to create barriers between our property and the Stott property. You can go to the next slide. So like James showed you, I actually got the chance to meet with the Stotts today. So we had a really nice meeting. They had some different concerns and nothing that we weren't unaware of. So I offered to them to plant some trees even this spring, so that the trees could start to grow and establish themselves on their property, and they were open to that idea. So we're going to meet with them next week and start to look at different ways where we can plant trees along this area here. And then once, hopefully if we do start construction in a year or year and a half or so, we would be open to building a fence prior to starting construction, to help them with their privacy during construction as well. So I think that meeting went well. I also reached out to Ed, he's here tonight, and had a good chance to just talk with him, and I answered some of his questions, and hopefully that helped him understand a little bit more about where we're coming from and what we're trying to do. You can go to the next slide, please. So then we dove into the parking management plan and really tried to understand. It was a good exercise for us to try to understand better just how much parking we have. So when you look at the colors here, you can see which parking spots right now, as of now, would be dedicated for those particular buildings. For the fishing cabins, we have 25 spaces. So for 8-9 months out of the year, we've got at least 2 parking spaces per unit. And then in the summertime, we would have 6 additional parking spaces. So we, with 7 additional clamping sites, that's 19, and we'd have 25 spaces. So we felt pretty comfortable with that. We would also, part of our plan with the fishing cabins is that we would send out an email and a text message, like I said last time, prior to anyone arriving, with a detailed illustrative map showing where they're supposed to park, and telling them that they only have 1 parking space available. And then we would of course have an on-site manager that's making sure that everyone follows the rules. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, maybe, do you want to talk about the fire lanes or anything? Okay. Well, so here, I just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know what we discussed with Bach and include some of the slides that we showed them during that presentation. So nothing that James didn't already highlight, but this is basically a zoomed in site plan of M1 and M2, which is where our community housing will be. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This is the floor plan for the first floors. You can see here a lot of the bike storage, as well as the electrical rooms and mechanical rooms, and a lot of the outside of the unit storage, some of the bulk storage for the units. That's part of the regulations there, that square footage types. And go to the next slide, James. And then the upstairs shows you that we are actually trying to make sure that we're tucking a lot of the storage next to the units. So the upstairs units here have half of their storage on the street level, adjacent to the building, and half of it right next to their front door, so that for the varying different types of things they're going to want to store, whether or not it makes sense to have it at grade level or next to your unit, is provided. And so I just wanted to kind of show you guys some of the plans that were shown with Bach, and go ahead and go to the next slide, James. And as well as the elevations here and the unit types that you've seen before, but just kind of go ahead and go to the next one, I guess. And then also, that we did run through the ordinance number 10 from 2021, as well as our checklist of amenities and area requirements to confirm that those are all being met, and describe those with them and have a conversation about that. In the end, they were very comfortable with the 24 units we were providing for community housing, and recommended approval and continuation. So go ahead and go to the next one. Then, once again, we added this. James already presented this slide, but this is a comparison to the 2020 master plan and our parcel that we're developing. And it's a good roadmap to sort of illustrate once again that we're doing our best to follow the community guidance that was presented in that document. And I guess that's about it, James. So you can go to the next one. It's just a thank you. So turn it over to public comment and your comments.
Cool.
Discussion.
Thank you. So I guess we'll start with commissioner questions. Any questions for the applicant or for staff? Mike, you want to start us out, or?
No questions at this time.
Jenny?
Well, can you remind me or tell me if we haven't gone over this before, what's your building plan in terms of phasing of this? It would come online all at once?
It would be a 3 to 5 year timeline, and we would start, we do the infrastructure first, so a year of infrastructure site work, and then we would look to build the multifamily after that, and then build the townhomes and finish with the fishing cabins.
Oh, okay, so that would be the last part of
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Bill?
Nope, we've heard a lot about this so far.
We have.
I might have missed this somewhere, but is there guest parking and parking for public?
Yeah, so on that parking management plan, the yellow parking spots were the guests.
Okay,
They're sort of scattered throughout, and then there's some that are right up against the recreation open space.
okay.
So going back to the site plan, here are the public parking spaces, and here are the short-term rental parking. And then the on-street residential parking is in this area, as well as on-street in this area, and these have garages.
Okay, thank you.
Rob?
No questions. I appreciate the very thorough traffic study. It's a part of our package.
Maybe a bit overkill, but it was a good exercise.
Quick question for staff. Was there a reason Post chose to not go with Eagle County and Pickens County and show some flexibility in the floodplain with the glamping spots?
I think generally they identified that they thought the vegetation could be rejuvenated on an annual basis, and since they're seasonal, that, there would be limited impact from those, at least on the riparian area itself.
Yep. Cool, just popped into my head. Great. No other questions from us, then I will open this up for public comment at 6:31. If you have a comment, please come to the mic and state your name, and if you're a resident of Basalt, and keep your comments to just a couple minutes if you can.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us. My name's Alan Feldman. I'm an attorney. I represent Anunnaki Williams, and they own all the property. They own the property, I guess, to the west and the north, the adjacent property. They have a really nice, serene place there that they've worked a lot on, building trails, and it's a sanctuary. So what we have concern about, we're learning a lot about this, especially me. So I just an initial comment at this stage is, there's no downstream fishing access. And I'm not aware, and I may be wrong, that there's no upstream fishing access. So what are these people? Look, I'm a fly fisherman. People love Basalt for fly fishing. They're going to glamp and stay at short-term rentals on a river that doesn't have any access. And I think that's going to be a problem. But we'd like to hear some more about that. Just said as a general comment, it seems like a whole lot of civic engineering to primarily be done to accommodate what seems at first blush, and I may be wrong, to be pretty much a hotel, right? It's short-term rentals and cabins and glamping. Putting aside who would want to glamp in the front yard of a big housing development, but that's just personal. It seems like this is, 90%, short-term rental hotel concept. And, the rest of it, yeah, we're going to do some employee housing. And we're going to shoehorn it into an environmentally sensitive area where I don't necessarily know if it fits or not, but we just wanted to make sure that we need to understand how you're going to protect my client's property from all these fly fishermen guests who are there to fish. Right? There's a river right there. They're going to go out there, right? And anyway, it's an initial concern of ours, but I'm really looking forward. I don't want to be all negative. Okay, I'm looking forward to learning more and more about it. But that was our initial comments, and thanks a lot for letting me say them.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make a comment? James, do we have anybody online?
We just have members of the applicant group, it looks like, online.
Okay. If there's no one else who has comments, we'll close the public comment time at 6:34, and we'll open it up for P&Z discussion. I guess we'll start with Rob.
I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time.
We have.
But it's nice because in the meantime, I've been able to speak with a lot of people. And people think that the first thing they say to me is that the glamping is weird. It's just a quote. I like that idea. I think it just appeals to a different kind of person than we normally get here and just gives people options. So I'm actually okay with the glamping pads. My biggest concern is dropping a 3-story building into a pasture. All right. I mean, the master plan talks about working from, 3-story buildings in town down to 2-story buildings to 1-story buildings, and that sounds nice. But right now, there's no 3-story buildings. You're going from the library and the post office, basically 1-story, to a pasture to a 3-story building that could have popped out of Willits. So I'd say that's my biggest sticking point right now, is the mass of that building. The rest of it, I think, sort of works. It's probably a little dense and putting a lot of people in a small area on the river with limited access. I think that they did a really nice job reflecting what's in the master plan. The master plan gives us an option of density or urban sprawl. Being at the meeting at the high school, looking at the proposals for this land, and people saying, "What about nothing? Why can't we just leave it that way?" And that sentiment is not really reflected in the master plan. That's where I am.
We don't usually have back and forth,
Which
but I would say the open space parcel, which granted, they're not gonna be able to develop anyway, kind of meets some of the open space, but leaving the whole parcel, I would agree, it's not reflected. Katie, any thoughts, comments?
I'll just be curious what the environmental impact study reveals, or the habitat study that you mentioned, because that's a concern for me. I feel like specifically the habitat for deer and elk is just going away in this valley, and there hasn't been a lot done to help with that. So yeah, curious about that, but nothing else.
Cool. Bill?
Yes, I have some comments. First off, I want to say I really appreciate this project. I think it's a really great project, and it has a lot of things that the master plan has asked for. And as such, I've been involved with this for a long time, especially this particular parcel and various iterations that have come in front of us. And this is the last big parcel within our, unbuilt parcel within our UGB, our urban growth boundary. And, as such, I personally, my personal opinion is I'd like to see not less density, but more density. And I understand where you guys are coming from with the stepping down the mass and the parking, but that's my personal opinion, because we've had other projects that responded to the master plan in the most minimal way possible, and this one does too, and that just disappoints, because it does meet the standards for a HUD transit-oriented development. It's within a quarter mile of a BRT stop. And we don't have many of those, and so that's the reason I feel that. That being said, I still think it's a great project, but I was disappointed about the density with it. And if that was, we wanted to entertain more density, I would think that any sort of parking forgiveness and master plan exemptions that would entail, which it would be okay with me. That being said, I agree with all of the draft conditions in the memo, with the two parking or turning lane options. I agree with the longer one, not the shorter one, because there's never less and less cars. There's always more and more cars, and it looks like it fits pretty seamlessly into what you have there. So I'm okay with that. Now, this is a comment I make to virtually all projects. For various reasons, but I would hope that you could think about the idea of providing more type A units in the multifamily than code requires. I just think it's the right thing to do to provide more accessibility. Basalt is in a unique place where people who frequent this area a lot could take advantage of that. I'm thinking specifically of Challenge Aspen and all the people who come through here for all of the functions they do up the valley. So there are more people, more handicapped people here that could really use those units than one would think. There was some question in the memo about the efficacy of daycare on that site because of the master plan conditions. I still favor it there, and whatever master plan changes would need to happen to have it there, because from a traffic and drop-off standpoint, it would work really well, because there's nothing else down there. So, daycare gets kind of, janky first thing in the morning when they're dropping off, and that would be a perfect place because there's nothing else happening there. So I whatever we can do to make that work, and it does seem like it would fit with the study that you guys provided, and thank you for providing that study. I think all of the traffic improvements that were shown were really good. Let's see, I mentioned the larger turn lane. I think PITCO's site comments and I think Eagle County site comments were a little draconian. I like the compromise that was reached, where with the regenerative idea, and with the glamping pads. I think the glamping pads, I also agree with Rob, it is a weird idea, but I think it could work, and if it doesn't, no harm, no foul, but I think it's well worth the try. And here's my last point, and this is more towards staff. I think the bridge was the stupidest part of the master plan. It was, I had discussions when we were doing that with Robert Graybill, our hydrology consultant, and we knew it would have to span the whole thing, even before we did the master plan. And a bridge that long spanning it is no one can afford that. No one who would be building anything in Basalt would spend that kind of money. And that bridge shown on the plan, it's like tens of millions of dollars, and it's really absurd. And we should find some way to make it go away. I don't know what it would take, but it would take some other action outside of this process. But it's not seeming like it's going to impact this particular project, but we should, staff should look at ways to make that be a little more realistic going forward. It was a good idea, but lots of good ideas are really, really expensive. And if the part about being the stupidest part of the master plan, I'd like that to be reflected in the minutes. I'm done.
Cindy, any comments?
I do. I've been thinking about this project a lot, and I'm not one to panic. And as I think about 68 additional residential dwelling units in Basalt, I start to get panicky. I do appreciate all the thought and detail that has gone into the project. I think it's incredibly well thought out. And if this came, if this was, say, 10 or 15 years ago, I would have said, yeah, no problem. But I think we can't think about anything these days in isolation. We have to think about everything else that's going on in this valley. And I think about all the units going up at Stotts Mill, Park Modern is going on, the tree farm, 67 units that are gonna be built in here, and I'm getting panicky about how much we're building here, what it's doing to our quality of life. It seems like at least once a week now, I get a Picken County alert about Highway 82 being shut down because of a traffic accident. I think we've all noticed how the incredible amounts of traffic going up and down in the valley, and speeding and careless driving is impacting our quality of life. And I just don't know, regardless of the employee housing component, which I feel like is whack-a-mole, we just, we build some more, and then we build more free market units, and that adds to all the people who need to serve those residents, and on and on and on. We're never gonna build our way out of it. So I actually, in an opposite thing, quite opposite from Bill, I wish there was a lot less density, and, in my ideal world, this would just be the fishing cabins and the glamping sites, and that would be it. So, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Mike?
Thanks for the presentation again. I think it is well thought out. I think the density is right. I think the transformation from east to west, from taller to smaller, makes sense. I think the development of a outdoor plan that was mentioned in the staff recommendations, and there seems to be some special species, some wildlife corridors, some natural wetlands that are really need to be preserved. And how are we going to do that? I think the glamping sites are a cool amenity. I think they're in the thick of some of that beautiful habitat that we need to preserve. And so what does that look like? And how is it going to be achieved? I do think the glamping provides an opportunity for people, a different type of person, to come stay in the valley. Hotels get more and more expensive. Camping is hard to get in certain areas, and so I think that it's a good piece to this development, but managing it is more of my concern than trying to nix it. I do, you hear about the property next to you with fishing, people walking down the river, walking on their property, so how do you prevent that kind of stuff? How does this all come together, and how do you manage this many people on this small of a site? I think is a big one for me. I think that intersection design with the right turn at Midland, I think makes sense. I think the longer one probably is the way to go. That'll be studied further. The one turning off of the on-ramp makes me a little queasy with the separation between the property line and the edge of that road, and bringing a bike path through there. I think there's only like 6 feet between the property line and the outside of that curve. So I think diving into that and how we're going to protect the pedestrians in that area is something that needs to be looked at. Bill's favorite topic, the bridge. I don't think it's feasible here. I do think that floodway is way too wide to have a bridge in that location. It'll be interesting if we follow the recommendation of staff on the feasibility study and maybe where it's located. Is it further downriver, further up, where it is even feasible? So my thought would be to possibly include a financial, if the town ever decided to move forward, the Stott property redeveloped, you know, is there a financial contribution that this project makes towards that pedestrian connection in the future, through a development agreement or whatever that would look like. You know, I don't, and if it never happens and it's never feasible, you guys never have to put a dime to it. But if it's something that farther down the line becomes feasible through redevelopment, I think that I don't want you guys to pay for the whole thing. I think it should be split between the Stout, this, and the town. You know, because it kind of connects all of that. So I'd like to see that, but that's all.
Thank you, Mike. I agree with a lot of what's been said. I actually, in the vein of protecting the area and doing that, I kind of find myself personally leaning more towards what Eagle County and Pickens County were proposing versus Post. Or a middle ground maybe is to keep monitor for the first several years to make sure that that revegetation is really happening, like we hope, instead of just hoping that it's happening. I want to pick up a little bit on what Cindy said and harken back to comments I've heard from Rob, at least in the past. Who's the housing for? So, and I'm not sure it's at this development level that we should have this conversation, but are we just feeding the beast that is up in Aspen and they are getting housing here in Basalt instead of maybe they're stepping up to the plate up there now, you know, and we're just putting in more housings and we're whacking a mole, like Cindy said, and that's not there. I think the glamping is funky and cool and very Basaltine, and I think the fishing cabins are great. And I get the idea. I think it's, Bill, you're right. It's a great little transit project. It fits what we want in the master plan and does that. But who are these people who are living there? Are they Basalt people? Are they, you know, people who work up valley? How are we just adding to this beast of development that's going on? I don't have an answer to that right now. I'm just throwing it out as a philosophical thing, you know, or, you know, maybe there's 2 employees or 4 employees if the daycare goes in that are directly associated with that. Are we connecting with the school district so they can come in and have employees? Who are these people that are gonna fill these units? And if it's just additional second homeowners, well, what's that do for anybody? I'm not sure that's the ideal place for second homeowners, but we're seeing them fill up the valley left and right. It's not the tree farm. I'm not gonna compare it to that. It's a total different beast. I get that. It's different in some ways to Stotts Mill, but related in that there's limitations there. So, I think you've checked every box that we've asked you to do, and you've done that, and this is a bigger question than what you guys are proposing. But I just felt it was appropriate to at least bring that up. You know, and how we do that, because Cindy, you're right, we can't build ourselves out of this. So I appreciate your comment there. Just echoing everything else, you know, as we go forward, you know, Rob's right to have 3, I mean, I like how it's scaled down, but to have 3-story buildings out there, we don't have them out there. You know, it's the thing you're gonna see from Highway 82, first thing you see in our community. It's gonna be different. Not good or bad, but different, you know, and then do we open ourselves up in 5 or 10 years when the Stott property maybe, or 20 years, you know, and all of a sudden we've got a variety of 3-story buildings out there that we didn't have before. Not your problem, but something for us to discuss. So those are some of the thoughts going through my head as we go forward with this, just longer term picture kind of things with that.
And Eric, just to clarify, I wasn't comparing this.
No, I
one
know,
to the tree
I know.
farm, just that we need to keep that in mind.
Well, there's
that
a lot of
2 miles down the road is
there's
gonna be
a lot of things coming in.
thousands of people in there.
Yeah. So, as James started before, we've got several options we can pursue as a board. Just to clarify, we'll have a couple more bites at this apple if we approve, correct?
Yeah, you're in a PUD process, so this is the sketch plan level. So there's 3 rounds of review by P&Z and council. You know, the sketch plan, as I identified, is, you know, basically to review it against the master plan and see if the concept is workable and feasible and of interest. And then if they were to receive sketch plan approval, they would come back for a preliminary plan where you start to work on more of the details.
Cool, thank you. So I don't know if that changes our thoughts or where we're at for tonight, but
And we're also voting on the annexation, right?
The annexation is part of their proposal. The annexation would not actually occur until a final development plan were to be approved.
Okay.
I do have questions, it turns out. The exhibit that depicted the 4,000 foot footprint for the childcare center, there's a sanitary line that runs through there. Can you just explain to us where that is in reference to the building, and does that building meet all existing setbacks, or how that exhibit was developed?
I believe this sanitation line has been abandoned.
Yeah, I think it has to, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to clarify that for this meeting. That diagonal right across the corner of that is not.
Okay.
So you're talking about right here, Stephanie?
Yeah, right across that corner.
Yancey Nickel with Sopris Engineering. So the sewer main is along the Emmett Road in front of where that building is and stuff, and then it gets up to our site and then runs across after that drainage. So it
Okay.
wouldn't be an impact on a site plan that the town was trying to do for it.
And where that's placed, does that meet the front yard setback, or would that be
The sewer line?
the community facility depicted?
Yeah, I don't know what the setback would be, because it's outside your urban growth boundary. You guys would probably get to zone it and determine that as a town.
And we would probably zone it as P-Public, and so P-Public, the actual development plan and setbacks would be established through a P&Z council review process, so they're, it's kind of like a PUD that you
Okay.
establish.
So I think you could make it how it fit the site, what made sense to fit the
We're
site.
showing over 10 feet setback, which is sort of the perimeter setback of the PUD for anything we have going on.
Okay, thank you.
That's showing roughly 10 feet?
I believe so, yeah.
Off the property line, which is right here.
The dotted line.
Oh, not the road.
not the road
And
that
on
does.
the
That was very narrow bike path.
Yeah. Cool. Additional thoughts on where we're at? I know, Bill, you were okay with it. If you want, do you want to make a motion, or
I am ready to make a motion. I have the motion look in my face.
you
Yeah.
do?
Yes, I will make a motion to recommend approval, based upon the draft conditions and including what option was the longer turn lane?
Option one.
Option one, turn lane, option one.
Great. Do we have a second?
I second.
Mike seconds. Do you want to do this as a roll call or just take a vote?
I think
Roll
we
call,
need to
okay.
do a roll call. All right. Rob Levitt,
No?
Can
Cindy Hirschfield,
I vote yes with reservations? Since this is sketch plan.
Katie Hostetler,
Yes.
and Eric Vozek.
Same with Cindy. Yes, with reservations.
Okay. Motion passes.
Excellent. Looking forward to working with you some more.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you soon.
That was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Did everybody vote?
Do I
I
need
made
to-
the motion, so,
Oh, sorry.
To Bill and Mike.
Bill, I'm
Bill,
sorry,
Mike.
Bill.
yeah, yes.
Yes. Then Mike.
Yes.
Okay.
Seconding it does not imply a
Yep.
Yeah.
vote.
Apologies.
I don't know if putting up,
I would have made the first, so.
the first, does that imply affirmative?
Implies doesn't necessarily mean it's a guarantee.
We don't want to leave room open for anybody to question it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Give everybody
Yeah. I'm trying to decide if I want to reflect in the minutes that in our valley, we're only, one guy writing a very large check for having a bridge. So, if the master plan is just aspirational, then leave it in there as an aspiration. It shouldn't be tied to a project like this.
No,
But
no.
it shouldn't be deleted from our memory banks either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really long pedestrian bridges may become extra cheap in the future.
Well,
Maybe they'll come up with levitating bridges instead of that.
Yes.
Yes.
what if just
Chat GPT can come up with
pedestrian
everything.
connection on the existing bridge or something. I mean, look, by 7-Eleven, that's now at a pedestrian bridge, right?
Yeah.
So we have it.
Yep.
The upside is that that stretch of the river is not a good place for it,
No.
because the
Correct,
floodplain's too wide
correct.
to effectively do anything. There may be a better location than that, but the master plan specifically mentioned that spot.
Yeah.
And it was a really good idea when it was just going across the river, the wet part. But when you have to span the whole floodplain, that becomes different.
Again, aspirational.
You tie it to the bridge and then you take it off the bridge. I mean, I think there's might be some room for creative design here.
Zip line.
We talked about that.
We did.
Yeah.
I think that came up as a joke. Yeah, I remember that.
That doesn't have to be in the minutes.
Awesome.
I insist.
Commissioner comments or staff updates?
Well, I think I'm gonna give you a quick update that, the Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers are doing a trail inventory for us, on this side of town, which may or may not relate to this discussion about the bridge. And just kind of going through where our trails exist and what the condition of our trails are and what needs to be improved, so,
Did we request that of them? Or did they
Yes.
ask us?
no, we
Yeah.
requested that, yeah. We offer them several projects to work on during the year, and this was one of them, in anticipation of moving forward with our post-maintenance plan.
And they do that for no charge?
Sometimes it's no charge, sometimes it's nominal.
Okay.
And then on an affordable housing topic, we have, Town of Basalt, Town Council at their last meeting opted into the state proposition 123. That's, an affordable housing proposition. This is important because opting into this proposition doesn't, obligate the town to anything until we actually ask for funding, but we would not be eligible to request funding had we not opted in. I think it's also interesting that opting into Proposition 123 creates eligibility for our residents as well to participate in other programs such as down payment assistance for buying property. It also creates eligibility for nonprofit organizations such as Habitat for Humanity or somebody like that to apply for funding, and even for developers who want to do affordable housing. So that door has been opened. We anticipate partnering with Eagle County and maybe even Picken County on moving forward with some requests for funding for some projects. So that'll be coming up hopefully in '24. And then I think my last update for you is that the Albany Park Playground redevelopment design is underway, and Post has recently reviewed that and making some recommendations on new playground equipment that is made out of natural materials, long-lasting natural materials, wood-based basically, and more sculptural elements to them. So that's really exciting. We're looking at probably a final design and a contract for that by the end of this year, construction next spring.
Michelle, question back to the affordable housing. By opting into 123, does that leverage funds the town can use in conjunction with the bond that passed?
You got it. This is one of the many tools we'll use to finance our affordable housing endeavors this year. So, because we certainly know that $5 million is not going to go super far. But having this ability to leverage that, a lot of grant applications require municipalities to have some level of matching, whether it's 5%, 2%, 10%, which is how I anticipate our 5 million will be used to leverage against a bigger grant. They being the state, anticipate having over $300 million available for affordable housing, so it's exciting. It's gonna be a real tool for us.
Great.
Yeah, I think you brought up some points that would be interesting discussion for us. I don't think tonight was the venue for it, but I would love to have that somewhere on an agenda that we can delve into those things.
I might mention to you that in a recent affordable housing or a recent development project, the town was able to negotiate that the free market, a percentage of the free market units were RO units without income caps, as another way to capture having Basalt residents and employees in the free market units. So that's something we can talk about as well.
I was surprised that Bach waived it on this one.
You have generally a pretty new Bach commission, so, but that's something that you guys can certainly pick up and run with, if you felt that need.
Is there any affordable housing that requires, in Basalt, that requires people to work in town limits?
So the affordable housing that we have that's deed restricted generally has a waterfall priority, so it starts with people who work in Basalt, and then it waterfalls down through the valley, basically.
Okay.
So it is oriented towards Basalt residents. As odd as it is, historically, we've had a hard time finding employees in Basalt for some of the units, and so it's waterfalled down to Picken County employees. Because Basalt has been an employment mecca historically, but that's changing over time.
The hard part of that is, like, say, if you're a Basalt resident and you get one of those affordable housing units, but then you get a better job up in Aspen, do you have to move out?
Yeah, no, that makes sense with the waterfall. I think employee housing is a very tough topic when it comes to people moving up in their careers, and
Yeah, or,
you get out of your criteria,
and Aspen's been struggling with, like, people retiring into their affordable housing,
and
which is like, some people get really upset about that, because it takes them out of the employee pool, but, okay, so you're retired, now you have to leave,
yeah.
so, you've invested 30, 40 years in a community, so those issues get very thorny. They really,
They do have the volunteer provision, which I thought was great.
The right sizing?
If you retire but you work in a community organization as a volunteer for a certain amount of hours, it still qualifies you. But no one wants to kick out retirees from their housing.
No.
That's, no one,
They're community members.
yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to see how their right sizing
Yeah.
initiative works out, where people can volunteer, trade
Because
a
that,
smaller unit for a larger one and vice versa.
yeah, it's kind of like work requirements for Medicaid.
Well,
Where the,
No,
yeah, you got to work to get Medicaid.
right, but not too much.
Yeah, because too much, then you
depends
lose
on
it.
who
Yeah, but
politician is requiring that.
you can get, all of these things can get very sticky places very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's a long and complicated discussion, and
It
it
is.
involves what other communities have done and how it's worked for them.
Well, I think where the discussion's fallen down is like, we're not our little bubble, right? We're in this valley-wide thing, and every time, at least I found, like, I've asked the question, like, how much housing does the valley really need? And no one ever has an answer because no one's communicating and no one knows, and then,
There's a very definitive answer that everyone has ignored. There's the valley-wide housing assessment that everyone is like pretending didn't happen, up to and including the staff of this town. It was very definitive when it was done, and it scared the shit out of everybody, and everyone is like, oh, geez, that didn't happen.
when was that? I don't even know.
It was like 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, about 5 years ago.
Are they redoing it this year?
It's a completely different landscape today, so I don't even know how much.
Well, it's always a
It's
moving
not any
target.
better, I can tell you that. And when they did that, my oldest kid was living in my basement for 2 years. So it was a very salient point for me, and it still may be,
Yeah.
Kids graduate from college and wanna come home.
Mike, they're not redoing the valley-wide, we're doing an update to our housing needs assessment for Basalt that, you know, discusses how many units are needed, it discusses, you know, where the demand points are.
As well as the income categories. Basalt has 3 categories, and they're relatively low. And last year, this group and other groups spent a lot of time discussing whether the income limits are too low to meet where the salaries are today.
And does that study, that's just within the Basalt limits, like it's not taking into account anything like MSA or Algebel, right?
The 3-mile planning area, so that includes Emma and Algebel.
It does?
Mhm.
But it wouldn't include the tree farm.
It wouldn't?
Sure, it would. It's
Would it
across
be-
the street.
Yeah,
Well, 3 mile, yeah, 3 mile, yeah.
when they
We've done that.
conduct the study, they look at the data in the 3-mile area, so they would consider
Okay.
what's approved in tree farm too.
And is there some
See.
firm who's doing that study?
Yeah, it's EPS, Economic and Planning Systems. They actually did the regional study that Bill was referring to, and they've done prior housing studies for the town.
So
In
there's a
most
framework for talking
municipalities.
about it
Absolutely.
and doing these sort of studies. It's, you know,
Which
it's
is
a-
excellent. That's kind of what I was hoping.
a well-trodden path. And, because I was working on a project in Glenwood Springs when that came out, and I watched the collective freak out at, you know, Glenwood Council. It was, you know, it's like, how could we do this? You know, because it was thousands of units for Glenwood. And then it started this anti-growth movement that the entire council got voted out. You know, it was catastrophic for them.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like they got voted back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things come and go.
Yeah,
Arvindale too.
cool. Any additional questions, comments, thoughts?
I have a comment to make about the Midland project. You know, there's a lot of hue and cry about what's happening there, and I think a big part of it kind of boils down to a fear of parallel parking. I mean, people don't want to say it, but I think they're afraid to parallel park, even though you know, the number of parking spots don't change, and they could come down here and diagonal park. But it's been a long time since a lot of people here have lived in a city and they had to parallel park, let alone on the wrong side of a one-way street. But
Yes, Chevy Suburban.
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that, you know, when people are talking about one thing with the Midland streetscape, they're really talking about another thing. So, but I think the town did a great job with it. I think it's a wonderful plan. And I think once it's all said and done, virtually everybody will appreciate it.
I feel like I missed the whole community outreach. I was not aware of any, there was one day when I think it was the Motors of Midland that I saw somebody with the, I don't know, placards that had those really confusing terms about the rooms and all this and that. And that was the one and only time I saw that. So I actually don't blame people when they say
Well,
there wasn't much community
I went to every
outreach.
single one, and there was probably 15 or 20 of them.
Where were they?
Most of them were here.
Out of town council meeting?
No, they were here at different times. With
So
the-
you had to come, you had to come.
You had to
I
come,
thought
yeah.
community- It wasn't at other events and stuff.
No,
right?
no, it was, you had to
Basalt
like look at,
doesn't have any other events. This has been the story of my concert putting on life. We don't have any other events.
so yeah, it was, there was a lot, and a lot of people came down and talked about it and put, you know, dots on pictures and did bang the drum poles and,
We had presentations here as
At least a
PEC.
Well,
couple.
we did for P and Z.
That's
but
public
for
too.
Community as a whole.
but
Yeah,
they were
I-
advertised in the paper and people showed up and.
I don't know, I was much more aware of the master planning process than that one.
Which is interesting
I don't
because
know, it's the same firm that
Midland
did
is
them
probably
both.
more high profile
Yeah.
for most people than the master plan is.
Well, this is a real project. The master plan is ethereal.
Right.
Right.
Anyway, I think it's gonna turn out great. we're still on schedule, right?
We are. We're looking to be finished end of next year.
What time does we're starting phase 2, right?
3, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so the water line is complete, and right now what we're working on are the individual connections from the new main water line to the individual properties.
Uh-huh.
And that'll go on until November, and then that phase will be done. That's our most risky phase, is working through the water line and those individual connections, and then next year we'll be
So
working
is
on.
that below grade?
Below grade.
So it's gonna dig up every alleyway and sidewalk?
Yeah, we don't have too many alleyways, but there will be some digging for sure, and some individual connections, but they're relatively narrow. So that's the biggest risk. What you'll see next year is the grading, because the way the shape of the street is right now is this shape, and it'll be going to this shape for that second drain. So there'll be a lot of grading going on, but with some known entities, because we know where the utilities are now and the depth, and so that'll be something else. And then all the pretty stuff at the end.
Motion to dismiss?
Do we have a second? Bill, Cindy, you want to Rochambeau? Do you care? Bill was first in my eyesight. Sorry, Cindy. All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned at 7:14.